Hello, everybody. I'm Karsan Turner, and this is our newest edition of the KPC podcast. As you can see, I'm here by myself for today's episode, loaning it out. But don't worry, we have a lot of great content that we're going to get into today. So we've got a couple of stories. I'm going to be going over the Kim-Trump summit that happened, I think it was Wednesday and Thursday. I promised I would talk about it on today's podcast. And then also, we're going to be talking about a prominent journalist who passed away this day 7 years ago. And if we have time, I will be getting into I'll kind of talk about Joe Rogan and Alex Jones. They did a big podcast together, but excuse me, I'll get to that if we have time. So we're going to start off with the Kim Summit 2 that happened. There was an exclusive interview that President Trump did with Sean Hannity, where he said that they currently have a good relationship, but there aren't any plans for denuclearization as of right now. It's kind of the opposite of the first summit. I feel like the first summit that happened over the summer, everyone was kind of wondering, is anything going to happen? They were just really unsure. Everything was kind of up in the air. But then once it happened, everyone was talking about it. But then for this summit, it was like everyone was talking about it leading up to the event. But then once it happened, no one really had anything to say. But that's because nothing really happened. It turned out that President Trump was pushing for full denuclearization for North Korea. And Kim Jong-un just really wasn't feeling it. And they just discussed, and they're still on good terms. There's kind of a funny quote that is from what he said on Hannity's interview. He said, gosh, where can I find it? Oh, he said, the relationship is very good. He likes me, I like him. Why shouldn't I like him? So, Trump always uses his very broad terminology to describe things when they're going well, especially when they're not going well. So we'll see. We'll see how this plays out. I'm anticipating another Kim summit sometime in the near distant future. And it'll be interesting to see. I mean, no president has ever gone this far to continually make contact and maintain a relationship with a leader like Kim Jong-un. So we don't really know what to do at this point. But I had another story I don't need that paper anymore. I had another story prepared for today, but I forgot that today marks the day that prominent, I wouldn't necessarily call him a journalist, I'd mainly say an activist, Andrew Breitbart, passed away March 1st, 2012. So I figured now would be a good opportunity to kind of go over his life. I've got his book right here. So he's kind of done a lot of cool things in terms of our current political culture, and really knew what to do in terms of shaking it up when it came to the age of the internet. So you may not recognize his name, but you would definitely recognize some of the things that he's done. He's basically took the old, boring conservative movement that we're used to hearing with just like the evangelical Christians who are uncool and kind of spicing things up. I feel like we see this a lot with certain Republican congressmen and senators. They still play nice to the mainstream media. And before I get into that, I just kind of want to say, that if you haven't been following, a lot of the things I talk about is just like mainstream media hoaxes and lies, because it's no secret to many people that it's dominated by a left-leaning ideology. But a lot of Republicans, they know this, but they're too afraid to kind of speak up about it. And they would much rather be friendly with the people who disagree with everything they say, as opposed to actually charging in forward and, pointing out the flaws that they're making and exposing them for a lot of lies. So this is kind of what Andrew Breitbart became famous for doing. He kind of told a lot of younger conservatives to not be afraid to point this out, and he actually broadened the movement of what it really kind of meant to be a conservative. He kind of said, you don't really need to be religious. You don't need to it's not tied down to a religion or a specific ideology. If you care about lower taxes and exposing the media, that's all you need to be in. So I think that was a really good move on his part, because he, in his book, he talks about how he started out as he describes it as a default liberal. He went to college at, what was it? Hang on. I think I have to read my notes. Dang it. I was seeing how long I could go without it. Tulane. I didn't even find it on here, so I still remembered it. He went to college at the University of Tulane, majored in American history, but then he was kind of wondering, okay, well, why aren't we learning about American history? We're just learning about how terrible our country is. And it's like they were reading a bunch of different papers that weren't from American authors, and it was all critiques of America. It had nothing to really do with actual America. And then once he got out of college, he was unemployable, because what job are you going to get when you major in American history studies? Which it's kind of funny, because I was thinking to myself, there is no way. What? The modern universities making a major that's unemployable. Who would have thought? So I guess he worked as a server, and then he eventually started selling scripts to Hollywood directors. And then like his radio went out one day, and he had to listen to Rush Limbaugh. And he said he started out thinking, okay, this guy is completely racist. And then he was like, well, he's not racist, but I don't like what he has to say. And then eventually that kind of turned him into a modern day conservative. And this came out during the age of the internet, and he created, oddly enough, the Huffington Post with Ariana Huffington. They used to be really good friends, and he learned to code, and she had an idea for a website. But right before the website launched, she was like, actually, I don't like anything you stand for, but thanks for making my website. You're not going to get any money. So he eventually made his own website, and a couple of things that he's done, too, is he helped, I don't know if you know, or Greg Gutfeld, he's very prominent. I think he wrote for Huffington Post. He helped get him, in a job at, what was it? Well, I know it was Fox News, but he had a show, I think it was called Red Eye. Yeah, he had a show, whoops. He had a show called Red Eye, and made Greg Gutfeld very popular, and Matt Drudge, who runs Drudge Report, he helped create his website and a lot of things like that. And like I mentioned, the basis behind everything that he did was to expose the media head on. And this helped him many times, but I'm also going to talk about one time where it completely backfired and it was really bad, just kind of as a good moral lesson to make sure you're thinking before you're going out and making these types of decisions. But one of the first cases he broke that was very prominent was the U.S. Congressman from New York City, Anthony Weiner. I guess he accidentally tweeted lewd photos once, and so Breitbart got a hold of those before he deleted them and then exposed them. And it turned out that Anthony Weiner, I think he was not only cheating on his wife with multiple partners, but he was sexting all of these girls, and it was a huge scandal. I remember I didn't even know anything about politics at the time, and I was probably 10 or 11 years old, and I even remember hearing about that. So he is the person who broke it. He also, let's see. Okay, so another thing, this was really topical. This was in his book too, and I couldn't help but think about modern times and what's happening today. He exposed the mainstream media for kind of buying into a hate hoax that didn't have any basis of fact, while ignoring two actual hate. I don't know if they were hate crimes, but two events that were extremely violent, and they had footage. So between August and September of 2009, there were two separate events. In St. Louis, there was an African-American member of the Tea Party who was attacked for handing out the "Don't Tread on Me" flags to random people. And there's video of people beating him up, and they're screaming the N-word at him, and it's a really terrible video. There's also another video, or another image, from an incident that happened in Oaks, California, where another Tea Party member was protesting, and he got into a fight with him, and the guy bit his finger off. So a lot of outlets didn't talk about it. Even when I was, going beyond what the book was saying, I was doing some fact checking this morning, and it was only Fox News who was reporting it. I didn't see any coverage from CNN or MSNBC about these events. However, shortly after both of these events happened, there was a huge scandal where it was the Black Caucus Party and the Tea Party. They were both protesting. A Black Caucus member claimed that they heard Tea Party members shout I think it was the N-word 15 times. So this was on repeat with news cycles. Everyone was talking about it. So Andrew Breitbart was saying, actually, I don't really believe this happened. In fact, I'm going to offer $100,000 to anybody who will show me one video of the N-word once, and I will give that to them. And I think it was after 5 days, no one said anything. And I think a video eventually came forward of the entire alleged event, and there was no screaming of the N-word. So we did a really good job of catching them in this big lie. And I have a graphic up here of another good example he mentions in his book. So this right here is MSNBC covering the Tea Party and kind of painting them as these, violent, terrible activists. So they have a close-up of a man with what looks like an AR-15 rifle, and so the narrative from the Tea Partiers is they're violent and they're also racist. But if you look on the other image, CNN shows the full clip, which is it's an African-American guy. So that just completely kind of kills the narrative that the Tea Party movement is reserved for only white men who are also explicitly racist. But this kind of reminds me a lot of some current events that happened. Even last week, these events are different in context, but just kind of in a broader picture of the media being more likely to side with the whole Jussie Smollett case. And I do think it's different because he's a celebrity, and celebrities tend to generate more media, more press. And I think that has more to do with if you're writing an article and someone is searching a topic, they're not going to type in hate crime. They're going to type in something like Jussie Smollett because he has a more recognizable name. That's a different. But the media being more likely to side with his story when there wasn't any footage of it. But I talked about this last Friday. There was that Berkeley student who was assaulted. There's a video of this guy getting the crap kicked out of him. And I even went on CNN today to see if there was an update. No update, no whereabouts as to who the attacker was. And I think the headline was like, student allegedly attacked. So they use the word allegedly when there is full video proof of this attack happening. It's just, it's absolutely crazy. But maybe for legal reasons they can't say it. I don't know. But it was insane. So it's just really interesting to me that a lot of these events have been happening for the past 10 years. People are still reporting similar patterns. And there are times, though, where this backfires. It's not a perfect story. This isn't a guy who just completely shattered what he refers to as the Democratic media complex because they do nothing but lie. He actually got into a lot of trouble with, there is this government agency called Acorn, and I'm not fully familiar on what the actual federal business, it's not a business, what the thing does, but I do know that conservatives didn't like it, and another prominent conservative figure, James O'Keefe and Hannah Giles, they made a video where it looked like Acorn was just giving out money for free, and there was like a skit where James O'Keefe dressed up as a pimp, and so the video made it look like he was dressed as a pimp, and he like went into this Acorn area. I think it was like some form of welfare, and he just like asked for money for like strippers or something. And it turns out the audio was dubbed over the B-roll of the woman saying, yes, I'll give you all the money you need. And he wasn't wearing the pimp outfit when he was actually talking to them. So it was a whole scandal, and the whole thing was fabricated and lied. And it was a complete hoax. But it was that decision that caused the federal government to defund Acorn, and it's no longer a platform. So it just goes to show it doesn't really matter what, side you're on. You can still kind of get caught up in the loop, whether you're the mainstream media and I don't know if I'd say accidentally, but you come across just sensationalizing news and it makes you look stupid. Or if you're on the other side and you claim to be poking all the holes in the mainstream media, and then you get lost in the story there too, and then you just end up creating your own lie. So I thought that was really interesting too. But that being said, there's still a lot of great content in this book. I think I got it from like a used book website for like $2 or something. It breaks down perfectly what a lot of, why colleges are so liberal dominant, and it also talks about I think it's Saul Alinsky's Rules for Radicals, which is a kind of a playbook that a lot of radical leftists will use whenever they're creating these types of stories. And whenever I say radical leftists, I don't mean like people who are liberal. I mean, they are so far left, they want to control what everyone else is doing. Because, a liberal is someone who's open-minded and they are okay with certain changes that are going on. But if they go way too far left, then they kind of become authoritarian. Similar with, a lot of conservatives. Conservative means you want lower taxes and the government to be smaller, basically. But if you go more right, you'll notice people want to have some form of control. So it exists on both sides. It's not just like there's a clear good guy and a clear bad guy. But his book, it breaks it down. There's a lot of great content in it, and it's unfortunate he passed away. But what's even stranger is what ended up happening. So I think he was leaving a bar, and he just collapsed on the sidewalk and died of natural causes at the age of 43. So it's kind of a mystery as to whether or not he was, poisoned or something else happened to him, because the last interview he did was with Piers Morgan. It was 48 hours before he died, and Piers Morgan said, well, no, he looked very healthy, and we even made comments about how he was looking much healthier. And I guess he had some information about the Obama administration, or I think it was, what's his name? John Podesta. He was talking about how he was going to drop this information soon and how no one can know about it, but once he drops it, it's going to be huge. But then he died almost a week after he started teasing that. And it actually, if you go to his Twitter account, one of the last tweets he has is why people, he was saying something about how he's about to expose John Podesta and the Obama administration, and so it's kind of eerie there. I've looked at the autopsy report too, and I guess it turns out the way autopsies work is that you don't know if someone is poisoned unless you test their blood to see if they were poisoned. You can't just like plug a USB into a dead body and then like the computer goes off and it's like, boop, you were poisoned. It's like you have to test the different types of poison and within the blood, and if there's a match, then it means that they were poisoned, which they didn't do. So I guess it's kind of up in the air. It's still a mystery, but that is Andrew Breitbart, one of the most prominent figures of the current political climate. For better or worse, I think he did a lot of good things in kind of giving good representation for the internet, kind of saying that this is where the future is headed. Because I think that's where he really had the biggest advantage, is making sure that his platform was the internet. He made it very clear he did not want to play nice with the regular cable news networks, and I think it ended up being a huge advantage and kind of shifted modern media in the direction that it, I don't know if it needed to go there, but it ended up going in this direction. And I think that's all I really have for him. Just kind of wanted to talk about it. I think if I remember last year, we had a podcast on like March 1st or March 2nd, and I was like, oh crap, Andrew Breitbart Day is the 1st, and I missed it. So I was like, next year, I'm going to make sure I get it. So here I am, living up to that word. But I think that's all the time I have. I don't know. How much time? How long has this been? 1 minute? 15 minutes? I guess I can briefly go over the Joe Rogan on Alex Jones. I haven't watched the whole thing, but so far I think it's the longest podcast that Joe Rogan has done. Last time he had Alex Jones on, I've listened to that whole thing. That's a 4-hour podcast, but this new one is like a 5-hour podcast, and already it's even crazier than the last one. I think, what's his name? Another MMA fighter, Eddie Bravo, he's in there. He was in the first episode with Alex Jones, and they do a lot to push Alex's buttons and kind of make him go crazy. There are some really, really, really good sound bites, but then also a lot of interesting, useful information that Alex Jones brings. Because what's so funny about him is that regardless of how crazy he sounds, it's kind of hard to hate him because he's just funny. I don't know. It's just he's way too hyperbolic, and even though sometimes he says things that are too crazy, you can't help but just like keep watching and seeing what he's going to do. And I think it ended up being one of the top stories that were trending on Twitter. And I think it just kind of goes to show that even though he's been deplatformed and censored, people are still very interested in what he has to say. And I don't know what's going to happen from that point on. I know in terms of other censorship that's been happening on prominent websites, I think YouTube said that they were going to talk about getting rid of their comment section, but that's not necessarily because comments are inappropriate. I think there was like some like a subgenre of YouTube where parents will film their kids at like dance recitals, but like pedophiles have been watching those videos and they comment timestamps where it's like a compromising split second, like really disgusting stuff. And I guess YouTube's been taking steps to kind of get rid of that type of content, but it unfortunately might lead to getting rid of the comment section as a whole, which kind of hurts a lot of creators. And also, if you comment inappropriate things, your videos might not be advertiser friendly, which kind of hurts a lot of YouTubers who, this is their living, this is how they make their money. But if someone comments like the F word, then their video gets demonetized, even if the video doesn't have anything profane in it whatsoever. But you can disable certain words in the comments. So I guess that's a way to kind of counteract that. But right now, the YouTube community is kind of freaking out and thinking that there's more, censorship that's going on. But the social media website that dropped, I think last year, Gab, it advertises itself as the free speech alternative, like absolute free speech. You won't get banned unless I think one person got banned because they said they wanted to go to Holocaust museums and like with a hammer. So like if you threaten violence, you're going to get banned. But it's like if you tweet the F word or whatever, you're not going to get banned. But they're working on a Google Chrome extension where it adds a comment section to every website. And so if YouTube gets rid of it, you just download this Google Chrome extension to kind of keep these types of conversations going. But yeah, we'll see where it goes in the future. I think Alex Jones being on Joe Rogan was a really good podcast. I can't wait to get back into it. I think I'm like an hour in, so I have like 4 more hours to go. And I guess that's all we have for today's podcast. Yeah, what's the time so far? Am I at the 20-minute mark? Roughly made it to the 20-minute mark. So be sure to subscribe to our channel. Tune in next Wednesday when we have our regularly scheduled KPC News broadcast.